All right, folks are going to Reddit for today's conversation. This one's going to be about AI tools and helping developers or not. So, the thread is really about someone asking sort of other developers' opinions. It seems like they're going to get a bit of pressure in terms of trying to leverage AI tools to become more productive. I think this is probably a theme that a lot of people can relate to, depending on the company you're at. There might be more sort of pressure from management, so to speak, that we should be doing more AI things and leveraging AI to be more productive. Sort of a kind of common thing that I keep hearing coming up more and more. So I feel like probably top of mind for a bunch of people. This Reddit thread has 300 comments on it. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but my plan with trying to go through this, because I made videos about this before and how I leverage AI in my own development, and also like if at all, if I'm using it sort of outside of just writing code as an engineering manager. So I've kind of covered that, but I figured this would be kind of cool to see other people's takes and if there's things that either I can learn from that or things I'm already doing, or kind of pain points that I'm seeing other people have that I've also experienced. So we'll start scrolling through this. Just a friendly reminder: if you have questions that you want answered related to software engineering, career, that kind of thing, leave them below in the comments or reach out to Dev Leader. That's my main YouTube channel as well. And that's basically on every social media platform. Just send me a message. I'll keep it anonymous. And if you're interested in resume reviews, if you check out my main channel, Dev Leader, I do have a playlist that I'm starting. And you can see, if you watch a video, how to submit your resume to that. But with that said, let's jump into this. So, the first person with a ton of upvotes says, I'm still giving these tools, and they say mainly Copilot, a try. No, I work at Microsoft. I'm not trying to push Copilot or anything here. I'm just reading the first comment, trying to find out how they integrate with my workflow. And this person says mainly doing front end. But generally, I only use it for tests and fixing obscure TypeScript issues, which is probably 60% helpful. And then they say overall, blindly thinking AI must be used is some dumb shit. So you can probably resonate with that at least a little bit, right? I think blindly just trying to do or prescribe anything is usually a big no no, but kind of interesting. So I know for me, I've said in other videos I use, I think it's that v0.dev. I just know if I type in v0, it's going to where I got to go. I think it's v0. I don't do a lot of front end work when I'm building in Brand Ghost. If I have to do anything, or even for my Blazor blog, I go to V0 Dev because I have literally no idea how to make things look good for websites. And I am the exact sort of definition of the person who's like, "Hey, LLM, do this thing for me," and I copy paste, and if it looks good, it looks good. I'm moving on. So interesting that they're not using. Doesn't seem like they're using AI tools for that, but I assume maybe because they're comfortable with it. Like they're already sort of skilled at that. They don't need AI assistance. But you can see, like from what they said, they are still trying to see how it integrates with their workflow. So they are still experimenting and seeing how to go about leveraging these things. This person says, I use it to generate mostly incorrect boilerplate that I come back and correct. That sounds like, why are you doing that? Boilerplate code that is all like it's going to be incorrect. Like maybe they just mean they have to tidy it up. Let's keep reading. I've written agents that iteratively test their code in sandbox environments. I find it all to be severely lacking. I've developed several tools like agentic coding and 2D character generators where rather than regenerate the image, the layers are adjustable. I could elaborate, but the direct answer is no, it's not there yet. Usually I get downvoted into oblivion every time I mention my experience as a dev somewhere. So maybe some people have a success with this. I don't know, but I don't. So yeah, I guess they're saying they're not being successful with it. So I could imagine it. By the way, I realize some folks might not understand what boilerplate code is just based on experience level and stuff like that. But this is going to be stuff that you find is quite repetitive that you kind of have to do to get set up to keep moving. So a good example, if you're a C# developer, this is applicable to other languages, maybe like Java. If you have some information that you want a class to have and you need to expose that, so it has like some state, you would use properties. And historically, the way this would look is you'd have your class and they would have some private fields on them, and then they would have public properties on them. So you have getters and setters. And really, just to have one piece of information that you're kind of tracking in your class, you end up having like 5 spots in the code that you have to do just to get this kind of going. Like That's going to be boilerplate. There's other examples of this, but the idea is something repetitive that you keep having to do. So if you're using AI to generate boilerplate code, cool, that's helpful, right? Saves time, but then it's incorrect, and then you have to go fix it anyway. That sounds like pretty inefficient. So I can imagine that would be frustrating. So I'm going to keep scrolling here. There's people just talking about like from their perspective boilerplate code and how that can be helpful. Um, so maybe that's kind of worth touching on. I think there are things like I'm a .NET developer, so I use C sharp and leverage .NET, but there's probably a lot more that I could do with source generators. To this day I have not actually kind of written my own source generators or anything like that to be able to help. But based on how I develop a lot of my applications and services, I think there's probably an opportunity where um, like I think I could leverage source generators more. So source generators would give us the ability to have code like write more source code, and you don't need to see it until like it's basically compile time, right? So it gets created as it's being compiled for you, and then it's included. Um, so like I think that would probably be my next logical jump, but I don't need AI for that. Um, Kind of interesting. So Copilot is great for several use cases, YAML engineering or other boilerplate code. So someone acknowledging just like, again, getting through boilerplate sounds like they're having success with some type of boilerplate code. You need to write lots of tests. Interesting. I want to stay on this one for a moment before I leave this comment. And then, or you're learning some new technology and want to build something small and quick. So, okay. I like these are interesting ideas. You need to write a lot of tests. I don't know. I think this is okay. Let me talk about my perspective on testing a little bit. Like I always talk about testing and software engineering as a means of building confidence, and I like keeping my definitions simple and kind of generic and general like that because I think that's what it ends up boiling down to. So it's not like, hey, you need to have 100% test coverage or you must have X% unit tests, Y% integration tests or whatever. I think that if we approach testing as how do I make sure that I'm confident in delivering my changes or how my, like, I think, again, that's what it boils down to. If you are trying to answer that question and you're like, well, I don't feel we have enough unit tests, or I don't feel we have enough functional tests, or there's not enough tests in this area, or whatever it is, then go write them. Right. So I use that as my litmus test. Now, part of building that confidence is going through and writing those tests and understanding. Now, could you use AI to do it? I think so. But this is the kind of thing where I would say if you're trying to build confidence, I wouldn't say, dear ChatGPT, go write me, as many test cases as you possibly can and then copy paste them. Because there's, in my opinion, something about going through those test cases and like building up the test code that's calling it and then like seeing it work that to me is like really helpful in building the confidence, not just having a green light. So to give you an example, could you imagine if you asked ChatGPT to go write tests and it gave you 100 tests back for some bit of code and you're like, hell yeah, like that's a lot of good like test coverage and you're like, this is going to be sweet. But then you realize it's like not actually asserting the right things and all the tests pass because it's just like asserting kind of dumb shit. And then at the end of that, you're like, okay, I have all these tests and I don't actually have confidence in what they do. And what now? Right? Like you got code, but is it giving you confidence? So I think actually what I should try doing next time, because I don't know exactly how this person's using, right? They said to write lots of tests. My gut tells me they're kind of just copy pasting stuff out. But what I might try next time I have to go test something is give it the code. This is for my own projects, by the way. So I could give it like some brand ghost code and say, hey, like I want to go test the scenario. Sorry, I am on call and just have to check that we're good. So give it some code and say like, not just go write the test for me, but like talk me through scenarios and things I should be thinking about to go test this. So almost like rubber ducking to have that feedback coming in. I might try that instead. So that might be something I do next time. Wouldn't recommend just blindly copy pasting just to have your test cases, but that's my opinion on that. Then they say, or you're learning some new technology, want to build something small and quick. This is exactly the case with the V0 dev stuff. I'm just trying to get something going in the front end for my blog, or doing a small thing in Brand Ghost. Like the other guys that are working on Brand Ghost with me are way better in the front end. Like it's almost like I don't have to do anything in the front end because I know they can. But if I need to do something small and I just want to do it quick, boom, AI, get it done. Um, Beyond that, though, I think that depending on what it is, maybe let me say if there's like a new, fresh, new like tech stack or something, I wouldn't be saying to ChatGPT like, "Hey, like, go give me the thing for it." So this is what I want to differentiate here. If there's something that I'm trying, like, we're using Next.js, and so we're building in TypeScript, and so we have this kind of stuff in our front end. If I just needed something small, or even for the Blazor stuff for my blog, right? If I just need something small, my perspective is I'm like, I don't actually really care about investing time to learn right now. I'm just trying to get an end result. So I might go do that. However, if I was like, hey, I need to go build, I want to give a good example here. Okay, in Brand Ghost, I'm building more things with like queues, and trying to get more around distributed systems to make sure that I'm feeling confident about some of these pieces. What I wouldn't do is just say, okay, let me go pick a flavor of package and system for queues and whatever else, and then just say, okay, ChatGPT, like go build it. What I would do instead is try to ask it questions about the technology, and maybe not specifically like which package I've picked. And the reason I don't like that is I have found personally that when I'm asking it very specific things about packages, and or I've talked about this for like hitting APIs, I feel like sometimes it confidently gives you answers, and because it's new to you, you don't have a lot of information to like kind of check against it. You're like, okay, ChatGPT said so. But you might be copying a pattern or bad practice or something from like a couple of years ago. Or for APIs, it's like that doesn't even exist anymore. So I much rather use it to like go learn about a concept. And then I can say, okay, now that I have a better understanding, when I want to go explore some package that's doing queuing, like if I wanted to compare RabbitMQ, which I've used many years ago, if I wanted to go compare that to some other queuing technology that exists today, okay, great. Like get me up to speed again on the types of concepts for queuing systems that I should be looking at. Now let me do a comparison. Maybe after I could, if there's new things that I'm uncovering, like I'm learning about some other queuing system and I'm like, hey, that's weird. Like, does RabbitMQ have something like that? Or if I'm trying to do pros and cons analysis, maybe I could ask it for some information, but just to spit out code for something that will be critical. And I'm trying to build up and I really truly want to understand it. I'm not just going to ask it blindly. Sorry, not going to ask it and copy code blindly. This person says, two places where I find it useful: ideation and prototyping. Some of these tools are good at spinning up boilerplate, and at least getting something running so you can actually test if a hypothesis might work. Yeah, I think that's really cool. And for those of you that don't know, before Microsoft, I spent a lot of years prototyping stuff at a digital forensics company. So, but then they say, but rare to be useful at work unless you get to build a lot of prototypes. Yeah. And a lot of JS development is researching if a package is available for what you want to build, blah, blah, blah. So playing with AI for code generation feels a lot like trying out random packages. I agree. Like that's like exactly why I wouldn't just take something out and then like use it and then move on. It would be like spit out something, let me see it working, let me try it out because I need to go understand it more deeply. And this person says sketching out documentation slash formatting shit. Give a prompt, get an outline for a scoping doc or a technical initiative proposal. Interesting. That's kind of cool. Yeah, and they say, or if I want to give the impression I'm a type A coder with annoying nitty suggestions, I'll ask it to alphabetize properties and CSS module definitions or TypeScript interfaces. But I think that's kind of cool on like sketching out documentation, like an outline. So, as a content creator, I've absolutely done this type of thing. So, to give you an example, because I make these videos and they're just totally stream of consciousness, right? Usually, if this is your first time here, usually I'm driving in the car and just on the way to work, and I'm kind of doing the same thing, just not staring at the camera because I'm driving a car. And then what I like to do is take some of what I would consider the most, I don't know, the topics of the week that seem to resonate the best. Then what I do is on my main channel, I will do a live stream the following Monday, which, by the way, if you're interested in this kind of thing, but you would rather have like a live interaction with me, I literally sit right here. So you can check out my dev leader channel, and every Monday, unless I'm sick or there's something else going on. So tomorrow, which by the time you're watching this would be tonight for you, I will be doing a live stream, and it will be on a topic that came from this channel. So as a content creator, I like to take the concepts, and then what I might do is ask ChatGPT, like, especially if I have the transcripts of me just blabbing away here, I can say, hey, go extract some of the key points, right? Then I write a newsletter article on it as well. So I have some framing for these types of things. So I like doing this as a creator. Now, for work, this could be interesting. I would use Copilot because at Microsoft, I'm like not going to put Microsoft stuff into ChatGPT. We have our own AI for being able to leverage internally. And then, honestly, for Brand Ghost, I wonder, like, I truly wonder if there's an opportunity for some of the core parts of our system now to start documenting them. Some of them have stood the test of time of like, a year without much change. So it's not like when it was like getting rapidly prototyped in the beginning where it's like tomorrow it might be a completely different system. So yeah, maybe that will be something I start doing more. Another person says rubber duckying in my experience, how I do this. Are there other ways? Yeah, when I've made videos on this type of thing before, that's something I recommend trying out is is just talking to it, right? Like get other perspectives. I know a lot of the time we're using these tools as like, hey, like go do this for me, but instead we can also leverage it to get different perspective, right? And you could even say like, you know, um, you could tell it or like, what's a good way to explain this? I'm not really good at prompting, so I'm trying to think through this for the first time. If you have a bias for something, okay, like, and that there might be different perspectives on how to do something, like you could even tell it, I want you to approach this from these different angles and then try to explain from these different angles. And then maybe that's like having a conversation with people that, and I'm not sure how I want to say this. Not that you want to that you're trying to go debate people, but if you were trying to think about designing something and you want these different perspectives, like that might be a really cool thing to try and do. So I might start trying that out a little bit more. Okay, what else here? This person says, I wouldn't say it's a massive productivity bump, but it's definitely sizable. Okay. I mostly use it for stuff like, how do I do some basic thing in this language? ChatGPT has pretty much replaced Google for me because it's faster and mostly correct. So I think this is interesting. The case where I like doing this kind of thing is I was trying to explain this to my wife the other day, actually. And so because I'm sort of the engineer in the house and she'll say, like, I have to do the boy jobs, there are certain things that she will do and she'll just say, like, help me. And it's the expectation that I have to help her. Doesn't matter what I'm doing, whatever. Like she asks for help, she's getting help. And there are times because of how I am where I like trying to teach her so that she doesn't need my help. You don't have to wait for me. I think the trick there is that she's not waiting for me. It's because I have to help her immediately. But if she were to have to wait, instead of waiting, I could say, hey, here's how you go do this. Pretty popular thing between us is like Excel formulas or Google Sheet formulas. So she'll say, how do I do this? And I'll say, I don't know. And she, well, you have to know. Like, I need you to get this done for me. I'm like, I understand, but you also need to understand there are things I don't know. Now, what's really cool is that what used to have to happen before like LLMs is I would go onto Google and I would be like, okay, like what keywords do I need to pick because I might not even know the name of what I'm trying to do, but like let me pick some keywords and then start to see if I can go down a path. We can shortcut that a ridiculous amount now because I can just describe things to an LLM. Like I could literally not know the keywords I have to use, but I can describe a behavior. So I can say into ChatGPT, like, hey, I need a formula that does this. And then I can try to give it some examples and then it will spit something out. And then I might see, again, at least for me, I'm not going to trust everything blindly, but I might see some things and I'm like, hey, I didn't know that that was like a function we could use. Like, okay, what's that function do? So I can either ask ChatGPT or I can go search it, but at least I have a jump off point. So that was one recent example with her where I was like, hey, I don't know how to do that, but we could go ask ChatGPT. Now, I did end up catching her later trying to ask ChatGPT things because now the question wasn't how do you do this? It was how do I ask ChatGPT for this? She's like, I think I've asked it, but like I don't know if it's just she was spending like 20 minutes trying to craft a prompt, and I was like, man, just like just send it, and if it doesn't work, just change it. But anyway, it's kind of cool. But that's the kind of thing for searching for basic things that I think can be really helpful. I might not know the phrase, but if it's really simple in concept, then great. Like something like a formula in Excel is not going to be like, earth shattering, but it's a good example. This person says, write a SQL query for me that's more complex than a basic join so I don't need to bother the data scientist on my team. Um, I scanned this earlier and I can't see the comment, but I remember this line coming up, and someone was saying basically like kind of defending it, saying like, no, you shouldn't do that. And then they were saying, what's going to happen is you're going to have these SQL queries that like you don't understand, and then what's going to happen? Like now it's going to be the data scientist problem to have to go deal with this. Like you're creating problems essentially. But this person defended it a little bit, and it's sort of the same stance that I have because I do this. I know how to write SQL. I when I'm building stuff in C Sharp and .NET, there's a popular package that's called Entity Framework, and with Entity Framework, you don't have to go write SQL. You can just like use objects, and it will go map. It's an ORM, an object relational mapper, and you don't have to do anything with the database. Like you can do a lot and not know any SQL, and I don't like using it. It's not because it's not amazing. It's like the most popular ORM that exists for .NET. I just don't like using it personally. I like having SQL queries. But there are certainly SQL queries where I'm like, I know that I could go figure this out, and I just don't want to spend the time. So I will describe exactly what I want, and because I understand things in SQL, I have a easier job using the right language to describe the challenge that I'm trying to do. And I've had really good success with ChatGPT writing queries. But for me, it's not spitting out a query that I'm like, oh man, like I have no idea what the hell this is doing. And I would say I agree with the other person that if it's making stuff where you're like, dude, what is this? Maybe time to pivot a little bit. Then they say, make this code more concise and functional because I know someone's going to bring that up during the code review. I haven't really tried this. I've talked about refactoring stuff. So maybe. I think I might be nervous to do that a little bit. So, and let me elaborate. I think if I had already written some like functional tests on something that weren't using mocks and had no concept of like sort of any internal flow of logic, just strictly inputs and outputs, what I would probably do is have a commit with all that stuff working, and then I might try giving some code to ChatGPT and saying like, hey, like go make this more succinct. But here's the thing, like I would want to give it something more tangible. Like you can't just say make this better because it's so subjective and nebulous that it's like, well, what the hell is better, right? It writes it in C sharp because you wrote it in Java. Now it's better. So like you'd have to give it some indication of like what is going to quantify as better. So I don't know exactly how I would do that right now, but that could be an interesting experiment. Maybe I will try that sometime or I feel like I'm in a good spot. I got my test coverage in, and then I can say like, I don't know, like go see if we can make this method better. I just want to make sure that I understand what better is. Maybe I could ask it to start. Instead of saying go make it better, I could say, hey, if you were looking at this, what things could we do to make this better? Then from there, it's a jump off point where it might give me a couple of ideas. I could even say, give me 10 ways to make it better. And not that I would go do those or something automatically, but I might see how it's trying to approach it. And then I could go, oh, like that's a good idea. I could ask it more pointed questions to try and structure what does better mean. So I might try that sometime. I think that's kind of cool. But I would commit my code first and not just have it do it, because I would be nervous as hell to currently, maybe depending, if someone's watching this in like 5 years and they're like, AI does everything perfectly, then great. Like I am wrong because I don't have a time machine. But at the current point, I could absolutely see it just missing context and dropping a case that you're really caring about in your code. So I think that's how I might approach that one. Let's see if there's one or two more that we can pull up here. I use Copilot, and it definitely works a lot faster, or I definitely work a lot faster with it. Basically just populates adapter methods, constructors, ORM models, and stuff really quickly. So again, more like some boilerplate stuff. It's also good at generating my implementation from interface definitions, some test cases. Yeah, so this is a thing that I do a lot, and I shouldn't say I do it a lot. I have a lot of code that follows a structure where I might have like as a .NET developer, I do like a million levels of abstraction. Guilty. But I kind of like writing code that way. It's my own personal stuff. If I were in a team and people complained, I would change it. The other guys in Brand Ghost are working mostly in the front end, so I do what I want. But I think the way that this ends up looking is I might have an API method, and I want to make sure that I can go into like a service layer that's not just like the web facing part. The reason I do this is because I want other hooks into this code, so I need like different entry points. But at some point, then I'll be going down to a database, right? So if you imagine if I was like, hey, I need to be able to not only create this data because I have that code flow, I might say I need to update it. So I'd make my update route. Then what I would start doing is basically I would type like the method name I want and use Visual Studio, say generate method, and it just makes the signature. But I would go into it and then let Copilot see if it can figure out how it might go create the body of that. Then it will try to pick names for methods that don't exist on like the repository that I have to access. Okay, so go generate that in Visual Studio, step into it, and then see what Copilot completes. I've had success doing this, and the reason, or at least the reason I think it's worked well, is because when I have some code that's already written in these different levels of abstraction, if I already have a create method, and now I'm doing an update method in the service, it's like I see how I'm being called for create. I know what I need to call on the repository to create. But now that we're doing update, it's like it can draw some parallels in terms of the structure. And it seems to do a pretty damn good job. So again, this is more boilerplate stuff, but I have found a good level of success. I am just checking notifications for work as they pop up. Because yes, I am on call this week. Fortunately, it's been quiet. Shouldn't jinx it, but I just did. Okay, and then last one I'll read through because this video's getting up there. Thanks for hanging out with me. This person says, it has been mandated where I work, so I honestly feel like I'm just trying to keep up by using it. That means I have to find ways to make it help me. It's definitely not good at complex tasks. It can be helpful with generating bash scripts, SQL, and automated tests. Again, the testing part coming up. Be curious, if you're the kind of person who has had success with it writing tests, I would love your honest opinion about how you feel confident in what the tests are doing. And I don't say that to challenge you. I'm genuinely curious because, like I said earlier, I would just be nervous. Like it's almost like artificially giving me confidence. So I don't know, but would love to hear from you. This person also says doing formulaic or repetitive work. So it kind of ties in with some of the boilerplate stuff. and then explaining a specific function. So again, using it as a source of information to ask questions, not to do tasks or generate stuff for you. So I think that that's super cool. I hope there's a couple of examples in there where you're like, hey, maybe that will help me, or you had similar experiences to some of the people where it wasn't working so well. But I'm gonna wrap it up there. If you have different scenarios where it is helping you or is absolutely not, leave it in the comments. I think that would be cool to hear. And of course, if you have questions, comment below or send over to Dev Leader, which is my main YouTube channel and all of my social media. So thanks so much. I'll see you next time.